Hello everyone and welcome to the last game we'll be showing from round 2 of this year's Tata Steel Chess Tournament. It is Jorden van Foreest versus Max Warmerdam, both of them locals, Dutch Grandmasters, and it's a really wild game of the London system where both players have an incredibly active bishop pair. They're sort of the game is a fight of whose bishop pair becomes fully operational sooner. So let's check it out. Quite a battle. Jorden with the white pieces opens with pawn to d4. We have pawn to d5 by Max, knight to f3, knight to f6, and bishop to f4. The London system, or the so-called accelerated London system, we have bishop to f5 going for the symmetrical variation, e3, e6, and now knight b to d2. Max continues going symmetrical, knight b to d7, and now pawn to c4. And for those of you who are maybe new to chess, it's a fair question. Why wouldn't black just continue symmetrical every move? The problem is there is the existence of check in chess, and that makes it a problem. So to give you a quick example, if let's say you continue symmetrically, captures, now white will play e captures on d7 with check, and well, due to the existence of check, black is unable to play e captures on d2. You have to deal with the pawn first, and then you're just down a piece at the end of this line. So if there was no check, it'd be possible, but then you'd run into checkmate and so on. But okay, d captures on c4, he takes the pawn, bishop captures, and now bishop to d6. Not transposing, going into the game that Nijat Abbasov played with the white pieces against Magnus Carlsen in last year's FIDE World Cup. So knight to e5 and now knight to e4, putting pressure on the knight here, pawn to f3, kicking away the knight. White gains full control over the center here. Knight captures, queen captures, and now queen to e7. In the game, Abbasov versus Carlsen, Carlsen continued with pawn to f6, and that game ended in a draw. But here we have queen to e7 by Max, and it is now as of move 10 that we have a completely new game. So okay, both players castle queenside, and now queen to a5. A bit of an odd square for the white queen. Usually you're used to the queen being on d1 and then having access only to light squares. But yeah, here queen a5 just puts pressure on that a7 pawn, and you have to figure out how to do what to do here. You could play king to b8, but it is better to first eliminate the knight on e5. So knight captures on e5, pawn captures, attacking the bishop and the a7 pawn, and of course bishop to c5 just defending the a7 pawn. We have pawn to e4, bishop to g6, and now pawn to a3. Creating some breathing room for the king. Maybe you can get the king later on to a2, but also b4 in the future might be an idea. So bishop to b6, we have queen back to c3, and now king to b8, getting the king off of the c file. And now comes pawn to g3. You could consider some other moves like maybe king to b1, but it looks odd as the bishop is on this diagonal, and then maybe you're just inviting pawn to f5. But even with pawn to g3, Max does go for pawn to f5. He wants to open up this diagonal and keep the white king sort of in the center of the board where it can be accessed by the bishop, by the rook, and well, all in all, it's a great bishop. So here we have e captures on f6, en passant, g captures, and now pawn to e5. This is a very strange move, as for the moment your queen and bishop are very, very strong pieces. But by playing pawn to e5, it's hard to say what Jorden wanted to do here. It's a move that, if it works tactically, of course, it's great. You are putting pressure on f6, and then, for example, if pawn to f5 is played, you can play pawn to h4 with the threat of bishop g5. Does seem to be very impressive. And then if captures, point is that you will not be able to play rook d8 because rook captures, queen captures, and you lose the e6 pawn. And if you want to keep the e6 pawn, then white will get control over the d file pretty much for the rest of the game. Once you play bishop to g5, kick away the queen, put the bishop on f6, you will have control over that d8 square. But the problem is he doesn't go for pawn to f5. He just plays queen to c5, and he gives up the e6 pawn. And what do you play here? Jorden decided to capture on e6. You could try some other moves. He decided to go for bishop captures on e6, f captures on e5, and now queen captures on c5. We have bishop captures, and now you see the problem of the white king being stuck in the center. You cannot capture on e5 because bishop to e3 check, and black's bishop pair became fully operational before white's bishop pair. Even though it's very impressive, the game is just over here. There's no defense. Rook d2 has to be be played, and then you just take the free rook, and you're very close to checkmating the white king. And another thing, after this bishop, after this bishop captures on c5 move, is that if you play, what can you play? If you play rook captures on d8 first, rook captures, and then you play bishop back to d2, yes, this is possible, but it does seem to be a very, very passive position. Rook can come to d6, attack the bishop here. Once the bishop moves, and it's hard to say where you want to move the bishop. If you move it to b3, it's in the way of your b pawn. If you move it to c4, then it's also just in front of the white king. You can even play something like bishop captures on a3. It's hard to say whether it would be enough for black to win the game, but it's definitely a much better position here. You already have a passed c pawn. You're probably going to create another one here on the queen side. It would be black playing for the win here. Other than that, there really aren't any great moves here. But bishop to h6 was played, which is a really, really poor move by Jorden, and you have to take advantage of it. So bishop to d4, just putting pressure on that b2 pawn, and also making room for the rook to enter the game. And now, as the bishops are incredibly strong here, what's the defense against the rook to d6 followed by rook to c6 check? There just doesn't appear to be any. Bishop to b3 was played, but now the move that we've been talking about for the entire game. I could ask you to pause the video here, but you already know rook to d6 is coming. So rook to d6 was played, and now what can the white king do? It's such a scary spot to be in, facing those dragons. If you try running away with the king, you're hoping for something like bishop captures on b2. Okay, you give up a pawn, maybe your king survives. King comes to b6. That's the problem. Attacks the bishop. Not much to do here. You can move the bishop. Rook captures on b2 with check, king to e1. The rook will come to d8, and it's, what can you do? Bishop f2 check, for example, rook captures on d1. This is a disaster. And another thing, if you maybe go rook to d2, you try and give your king the d1 square. Also, doesn't really work. Rook to c6 check, king to d1. And now, okay, you could go for rook to b6 like in the previous line, but you could also play bishop h5. Also very, very strong. And the point is, if pawn to g4, there's just rook captures on h6. Also one of the problems of Jorden's bishop on h6. And then after g captures, you just repeat rook to b6, go after the bishop here with king to c2. Now you bring the other rook into the game, and okay, rook to f1 can be played, but your position is just terrible. It's only a matter of time before black wins this. So instead, after rook to d6, rook captures on d4 was played. Jorden tried an exchange sacrifice. E captures on d4. Of course, you have to accept it. And now bishop to d1, guarding that f3 pawn against the threat of bishop to h5. So rook to e8, and now pawn to h4. We have rook to c6 with check, king to d2, and now rook to b6. Going after the b2 pawn, we have king back to c1, and here we have a repetition for a few moves. Rook back to b6, king to c1, but now Max, of course, does not want a draw by threefold repetition. He will push for the win. Pawn to c5. Pawn to h5, attacking the bishop, bishop to d3. We have bishop to g7 now. Finally, the bishop gets activated, and bishop to e2. There were some other moves like rook to e3, which were probably more precise, but bishop to e2 was played here. And now, even with the absolute best move, it's still a difficult position for white. For example, if rook to e1, okay, the rook on e8 is undefended, but you can just play rook b to e6. And again, pawn to f4 will be played. Very, very hard position for white. But okay, you might have some counterplay here. You can't really play g4, but you have f5, f6 coming, so this was your best option. But he played f4 right away, and now just bishop captures on d1. We have rook captures on d1, and now rook to b3, putting pressure on the g3 pawn. So bishop to e5 with check, cutting off the e8 rook from entering the game. King to c8, and now rook to g1, defending the pawn on g3. And okay, you might have something here. The bishop controls the rook. If you have g4, g5, g6, you create a passed pawn, maybe some f5, f6 action. all of a sudden it might be white playing for the win here. But rook to g8. Of course, you're not going to allow pawn to g4, but it still happens. Pawn to g4, and now rook to h3, showing that pawn to g4 was not really relevant, as now rook captures on h5 is the threat. If pawn captures, the rook on g1 is undefended, and you don't really have a way of dealing with this. King to d2 was played, and while you could play rook captures on h5, he just plays king to d7. And now pawn to g5. We have king to e6. The king is now in the game. Pawn to b4, and now pawn to c4, and he was in this position on move 40. Upon reaching time control, that Jorden Foreest resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. So a really tough loss for him after losing round 1 to Alireza as well. The problem is, of course, the pawn cannot be captured. If the pawn is captured, then this just wins material here. And if you can't take that, what else can you play? Well, okay, we could show you a fun line. Let's say you just play for the win here. King to d5. Let's say you play g7. Okay, pawn to c3 check. King to c2. King to c4 with check. And now you're going to play f5. Let's say pawn to d3 with check. King to b1. King to b3. And now, okay, f6 is coming. You're very close to getting 2 of your pawns to the 7th rank. But now pawn to d2. And there's not much you can do here. One c2 check lands, that's pretty much it. So you're going to have to take a pawn here in order to eliminate the passed pawns. Let's say rook captures, and now you're going to play rook to d1. But now just rook g to c8. And okay, white could get some play here, but it's nothing really. Now if you capture the pawn, of course, rook to c1 is mate in 1. If you don't, then just rook to c1 with check. Rook captures and rook captures will be checkmate, so there's really nothing to try here. You don't have time for f7, you don't have time for g8. Looks very nice, but that's all there is. So yeah, after pawn to c4, Jorden resigned, and a very nice victory for Max Warmerdam. And the results after, as only 2 rounds have been played, Alireza is on full 2 points, and on a point and a half, it's Gukesh, Yanni Pomnishi, and Anish Giri, with all the rest to follow. And you haven't seen my previous videos, these are the results of round 2. So Abdusattorov drew against Pragnananda, Yanni Pomnishi drew against women's world champion Ju Wenjun. It was a really a nice fighting game, much like her game against Anish Giri in round 1, which she lost, but yeah, against Jan she was able to hold the draw. Even though in the end game it was her who had a pawn advantage, but it didn't really make any difference. Anish Giri versus Vedita draw, so I guess they remain friends. Wei Yi versus Gukesh, we've seen that game. Gukesh took a victory there. Alireza defeated Maksulu. We also checked out that game yesterday. Ding Liren, a draw for the world champion against Alexander Donchenko. So was pretty strange, as Ding did have the white pieces. Everyone was expecting a win here, and we have yet to see Ding winning a game in classical, since becoming world champion, in recent times. And Jorden Foreest versus Max Warmerdam. Max won a very nice game here. So yeah, just a cool London system game with both players having a really active bishop pair. Only Max's bishop pair was much more fully operational. So yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Very much looking forward to round 3. I would like to thank Welsh fan Mark Henley Brennan, Mark Banner, Best Content Maker, and Brian Paquin for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. Really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing to check up on your wonderful suggestions and whatever else happens in the chess world. So thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.